Welcome to New York, Florida Crosstalk. Florida transplants with a New York attitude. We give you fact-based viewpoints on today's current events. Join John and Mike where no topic is off limits.
Hello and welcome to New York, Florida Crosstalk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John. And since our first show didn't go too bad, we're back again.
And happy Earth Day to you, John.
Happy Earth Day.
So what'd you get me?
I got you climate change.
Oh, nice, nice. Wait, climate change doesn't exist. You know how I know?
How's that?
I asked Ted Cruz.
Well, I mean, it's not just Cruz if you think about it. It's actually Trump too.
Yeah, well, the GOP.
Yes.
You know, I still have a hard time to grasp that Donald Trump is part of the GOP. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you always think of Donald Trump just kind of as his own person.
Donald Trump is the guy who sits behind a desk and says, "You're fired." You know, so he's anti. He's not establishment, but he's becoming establishment.
Right.
But I mean, Ted Cruz makes it obvious. He's just a very, very big extremist when it comes to things like climate change. And today's Earth Day, so it's a great time to deny it. What do you think?
Well, according to Ted Cruz, the data and information does not support climate change.
According to Ted Cruz, exactly. Forget all the scientists that say it. I mean, because Ted Cruz knows best.
Right.
All right. And if Ted Cruz don't know, you could go as Donald. The Donald, right?
Right.
But I mean, Ted Cruz has made some very, what do you say? Facts don't support climate change. Trump actually did a tweet. Do you remember what the tweet said? It was something like
that the government is wasting money on all this nonsense with climate change.
I actually think he used a different word than nonsense, but you're right. But you know, bringing up that whole concept of the government is wasting money on climate change, that's what kind of really stumps me about the GOP. And I think that a lot of people, especially ones that don't pay attention to politics very much, get trapped in. They see the Republicans, they see the GOP as the morally high, God-loving Christian party, but if you look at this earth as a gift from God, you're okay with damaging it because it's going to make money. That just doesn't make sense to me.
No.
You know, and this is what it comes all down to. I mean, even if they're right, if let's just say the two sides of the argument, climate change exists, climate change doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. If climate change doesn't exist, okay, great, this earth is saved. If it does exist, but you deny it, we're doomed. I mean, really, kind of like Bernie said.
Well, I mean, just history in itself will prove that climate change exists. We've gone through ice ages and everything else, and that just shows that climate change is there. It's just the rapidity that it's actually happening.
Right. I was actually reading a report from NASA, and they discussed that. It discusses how throughout history, climate change has been up and down, mm-hmm. but it's never been like this.
I mean, you can see it just in our weather changes. I mean, we've had some of the worst weather. I mean, we just got through 3 major earthquakes in different countries, and it's affecting us.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, you and I were discussing this the other day. I think that's the biggest challenge that a lot of people don't realize. For a long time, and people still call it global warming, and it's really climate change, and that's why the weather patterns have been so crazy.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about it, people call it global warming, but unless you look at it on a global level, it really doesn't change. I mean, when they're talking about 1 degree globally, that's huge.
That's huge. That's like saying the oceans are rising 1 to 2 inches. That is major. That's really huge. But to the average person, they look at it and say, it's not a big deal.
And I mean, you can tell just with the migration of the sharks and everything, we're actually seeing great whites coming down from the north, and they've been tracking these recently.
Well, it's really hard to say climate change doesn't exist, and I know I've heard from different politicians at different stages of of their denying of climate change. It went from climate change doesn't exist to climate change exists, but it's a natural occurrence, and man isn't contributing much to it. So you have different aspects of denial. But like I said, 97%, if I'm not mistaken, of scientists all agree with climate change, and I could be wrong on that statistic. But I think Obama said it right. He said if you go to 100 doctors and they all tell you you have this certain condition, or 97% of them say you have a certain condition, but 3% say, no, you're okay, who you tend to believe?
Right. Well, I guess one of the big things that affect the climate change is the movement of the tectonic plates. And I mean, that can be verified just with the amount of earthquakes we've been having.
And earthquakes, but there's also the whole thing with fracking with earthquakes too. I know in some states, like I said, biggest problem, and I think this is where Bernie gets his talking points from, is the greed and the profit. They don't care about the climate. They don't care about earthquakes. They don't care about fracking. They don't care about polluting water if it's going to put more money in somebody's pocket, or somebody who's lining your pockets and telling you that this is what you should do.
I mean, Florida is a perfect example that when you take something out of the ground so much, something's got to happen. And the sinkholes here in Florida are the perfect example of that. I mean, during the dry months, our aquifer starts running lower, and we get the air pockets down there, and we get the sinkholes. That's just showing that by us taking the water out of there, what's going to happen. Now, same thing with the oil in that out in the ocean. I mean, if you take enough of that out of there, it's going to affect something.
Absolutely. There's, balances, you know what I mean? Things are a certain way because of balances. And I mean, just on a whole nother point, talking about Florida, a big portion of Florida's money is tourism. You know what I mean? Why would you want to pollute our oceans here? We have some of the best beaches, especially on this coast, We have beaches that have been rated in the top 10 or the top 5, even number 1 for certain years.
Clearwater Beach.
Fort DeSoto Beach has, in the past, I believe in the early 2000s. You have a lot of great beaches down here. Miami Beach, I mean, that's worldwide known. Why would you want to do anything that's going to possibly hurt the tourism business here?
Well, I mean, look at...
And the earth. I don't mean to just make it about money either.
Right. Well, look at 2 years ago, what happened with the oil company, and how many beaches that polluted. How much of the wildlife it killed.
Oh, absolutely. And, you would think that'd be a wake-up call. I think this country is getting so numb on disasters and things happening like that, and it just becoming acceptable. And I think one of the reasons is because the people who are earning money, or I should say profiting from those disasters, and what I mean by those disasters, they didn't want the disasters to happen.
Right.
But they're profiting from what's going on, and the disaster just happened. So they get these spin men. These spin men make so much money that they take it out of the media. People are getting numb. They're not paying attention to it. People, are worrying about where they're getting their next paycheck to put food on the table. So they hear something like that, and it's like, yeah, I'm concerned about it, but it's not my top priority right now.
Right. I mean, they minimize it to it was just a small area that was affected. But what they don't realize is how many years that small area is going to be affected for.
Right.
It didn't quite make it down as far as us, but it came pretty close.
It did. And again, it's we don't know the long-term effects either.
Right.
We can hear everything that money is putting into the news media, saying everything seems to be okay right now. But what are the long-term effects? We don't know. And what do we want it to happen again?
Well, just marine life in general. When you talk about climate change, marine life in general is at risk because the water's warming up and the new streams and Gulf streams and everything. And now we're adding in another mix, which is oil down there, and that's going to affect it all too.
And again, when look at this, and this is Bernie's big talking point. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to money. The fact of the matter is, it might not be profitable for a lot of these companies right now to invest as much as they can and try and get this, the new technology for energy. So they're going to keep pushing the oil and dirty fuels. Mm-hmm. Not realizing that, number one, it doesn't make us any safer. Why do we need to depend on oil if we can develop energy in this country and not depend on other countries? You would think, especially the GOP, which always wants to come off as the most patriotic party, that they would say, yeah, we don't want to depend on anybody else in this world. It's America.
Yeah, but so many of the people that have money are invested in the oil companies and are invested in the fossil fuels that they just can't give it up.
Well, again, now you're looking at profits versus a belief in God's gift to humanity, Earth, right? How do you go out there and say, we're God-fearing, God-loving people, but this gift that he gave us, you know what, I'm making a buck on it, so it's okay if we damage it. I know if I gave you a gift and you treated it like crap, it's going to be like he didn't appreciate it. So if you have that belief system and you say, God gave us this earth, but, it's okay to get these oil spills and dirty it up and everything.
Well, one of my biggest problems with the oil company is, and this just happened with the last oil spill over here in the Gulf, I guess one of the valves or something had failed.
Right.
The problem was the oil company says that they were abiding by their regulations and everything. They were following regulations and in some cases exceeding them. But the big question came about when they were actually questioned. There was actually more they could have done, but it would have cost more money to safeguard this.
And you start when you really start reading into this, and that's what the average person doesn't read, doesn't find out about, doesn't hear about.
Yeah, all they hear is that, they were following regulations.
Right.
But regulations are set there as a guideline. That's the minimum you can do.
Right. And if you really care about the planet, you do more than what you need to do. People cry about regulations, things being overregulated, and I can understand that for certain things. But when it comes to the health of this country, when it comes to the health of the people of this country, you need people overseeing other people. You can't just leave it in the hands of the profit-driven person.
Well, a good example of that too is the hole in the ozone that as a Republican you wouldn't admit exists, but at the same time, the companies that do refrigeration and stuff actually changed the chemicals that they use because they found out that was actually contributing to the damage.
Okay, so
something must be happening that backs up this data if it actually inspired a change like that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that's backing up the data, and like I said, it puts the average Joe out there and not really having an opinion. They're going to go by headlines. They don't take the time to read, and if they do read, they're reading something that's skewed because the information given in that article might be from somebody who's directly or indirectly profiting, or somebody that's directly or indirectly against it. So again, they're reading an agenda-driven piece. Mm-hmm. You got to go down to your sources. It all goes down to sources. Listen, you and I, we do our very best to back up our claims and our source, and we bring sources to the table. Do we ever make mistakes? Absolutely. We're human, and we might read something and remember it differently.
Right.
But this is something, when it's something that's very important, you need to go to the source. And
when you've got data backing it up from several different locations, there's no disputing it.
Well, Ted Cruz said the data doesn't matter. There's no data showing up. Now, who are you going to believe, the scientist or Ted Cruz? Look at Ted Cruz's face. I mean, doesn't he have the face of somebody who you
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Ted Cruz. Let's talk a little bit about the GOP and what the GOP thinks of Ted Cruz.
Wow.
Not just now, but back before they started supporting him.
That to me it's not unbelievable because, again, look at the party in general right now. Right now you have a reality star and you have a person that all of Congress disliked.
Disliked past tense.
Past tense. I'm going to read you some quotes. It's really funny. Let's see. Bob Dole, who's a Republican, he speaking about Ted Cruz, he says he doesn't have any friends in Congress. Ted Cruz, he called the leader of the Republicans a liar on the Senate floor. Peter King, who's a Republican over in Long Island, CNN's Wolf Blitzer asked him if he would support Ted Cruz as the nominee, and he replied, "I hope that day never comes. I'd jump off a bridge when it comes to it." He called Cruz a carnival barker, a counterfeit with no qualifications, somebody who appeals to the lowest common denominator, and just a guy with a big mouth and no results.
Yeah.
This is the guy you want to back up.
Yeah, that's what you want to hear from a person that's now backing him.
Well, I don't know if he's actually still backing him, Peter King, but he is a Republican. My point, I don't know if he's backing him, but he is a Republican. Mm-hmm. These people want they want a Republican in the White House, but look at the choices that you have. Unfortunately, you've heard the term rhino, right? Republican in name only. And I've actually found it to be the opposite. Years ago, when you had moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats, especially Republicans, you can sit there and there's something called compromise. Mm-hmm. You have a certain thought process, a certain ideology. The opposite side of the aisle has a certain ideology. You sit there, you don't agree. After work, you go and you have a beer somewhere with the two politicians or the group of politicians, and you actually work out a deal. You're not seeing that anymore.
No, not at all.
Ted Cruz is an actual example of that. He said something in Philly this past week when during the New York primaries. I think he really knew that New York, and I'm very proud of my home state for this. Basically, he got nobody voting for him. I mean, very small percentage.
Actually, I thought I heard zero.
Well, he gets 0 delegates.
Yes.
Because he didn't get enough people to vote for him. I mean, the Bronx, forget it. He tried to go in there and he goes into every place and plays up, using his own political agenda, plays up what he thinks can help him. So he goes in there and starts talking about his Hispanic heritage, and they're basically telling him, get out, in New York fashion with that New York attitude.
Yeah.
But during the New York primary, he was actually in Philly, and he said something. He said that we need to start unifying the party and unifying the country. This is a guy that can't even get along with his own party.
Well, his own party doesn't like him. He thinks that everybody should adore him, though.
And that's what I believe he means is, in order to unify, is not for everybody to meet in the middle. It's for everybody to see things the way he sees it.
Well, in a lot of cases, it's like that. I mean, you read me a quote earlier of what Rubio had said when he was going against Cruz, and then you read me another quote of what he's saying now.
Well, I'll give you that quote. Some ABC News did an article, and it said that I believe it said that he's sort of endorsing Cruz now, and they took it from this statement. This is according to Rubio. I hope that they'll nominate a conservative, Rubio said. The only one or the only presidential candidate that fits that criteria, being a conservative, is Ted Cruz. So that's basically, in 2 sentences, saying we need to back up a conservative, and that only one that's a conservative right now is Ted Cruz.
Right.
Prior to that, this is what Marco Rubio said. Nobody likes him. Nobody in Congress likes him. Nobody likes him anywhere once they get to know him. He's got an edge that's not good. You can't make deals with people like that, and it's not a good thing. How are you endorsing or even
talking him up at all?
To me, I don't know if maybe you got to do that because that's part of your cult or your little club now. Hey, I got to back up the guy that's running. Is it an anti-Trump push right now? That's a possibility.
Definitely.
Because I'll tell you what, and I think you had mentioned this one day when we were discussing it. If it goes all the way down to the convention, and they actually turn against Trump, are they going to go for Cruz or are they going to go for Kasich?
I truthfully, I mean, if I was a GOP member, and I mean, I would be scared with the two candidates that have the possibility right now. I mean, I would actually have to hope for it to go to the convention and go for Kasich.
You know, Kasich is probably the most moderate at this point of the game. He seems to talk a good game. Whether he believes what he's saying or not, I don't know. That's politics in general. You could say the same thing about Hillary and even Bernie.
But just for the fact that he's staying moderate enough so that he's not attracting the media attention that the other two are.
Right. And I think that's why he's staying in the campaign with basically, what did he win? I think he won Ohio. And the funny thing is that he won Ohio, which is his home state.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Cruz won Texas, which is his home state. And Donald Trump won New York. But Donald Trump won New York by a much bigger margin than Cruz or Kasich won their own state.
Mm-hmm.
New York backed Trump. The New York Republicans backed Trump.
Yeah, and that's scary too. I mean, they've seen what he's capable of doing. I mean, just with the little riots that happened at his convention or at his rallies.
Oh, right. I mean, and it seems like the people that what did you say that we're talking to that Manhattan actually voted for Kasich?
Yeah. Manhattan. Kasich actually made a comment. This was in the Washington Post. He made a comment that he's like, well, I took Manhattan. That's a start.
And if that's the truth, that tells me that the people who know Trump the best, since most of his business dealings seem to be in Manhattan, don't like him.
Right. I mean, what a smash when it comes to Trump. I mean, something where his major business dealings are at, and he loses that area.
Right. And I don't know if I'm sure you've noticed, but Trump has mellowed a little bit, huh? He's trying to get a little more political.
Yes, yeah. It was my understanding that he fired his whole team, and he's actually focusing on more of the issues now.
Well, I think it needed to happen at this stage. I think he needed to get people that understood the way the system works more, because my understanding was the reason he's even in this circumstance where he might not get the nomination right out is because the people on his team didn't know how to work the delegates.
Right.
And again, this is from things you're hearing. So there's a lot of rumors out there, and he came out the other day after his win. He sounded much more political, sounded much more mellow. And he even said, now you're going to hear the boring Trump.
Although I did hear yesterday morning, once again in the Washington Post, that he made that a comment was made that he's back to the Lion Ted again.
How, if that's true, I mean, how are you going to hold back a Donald Trump?
Right.
You know?
And I mean, his true personality is going to come out even when he's trying to be serious about something. And I mean, do you want somebody that's got to throw in a dig like that? If he feels it necessary to actually throw in a dig like that, I mean, who does it benefit? It doesn't benefit his party at all. It just makes him look like a bunch of schoolyard kids.
And I mean, that's how the party's been looking since it's been dwindling down and less of the establishment has been in it. Don't get me wrong. I totally understand the sentiment of anti-establishment. I think politics needs an overhaul. We need to get money out of politics. Politics, what politician, majority of politicians I understand are millionaires. What politician actually represents the people anymore?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, we got a lot of stuff coming up in the following weeks. We got Pennsylvania coming up next Tuesday.
We got Pennsylvania, we got Connecticut, Maryland, and Rhode Island.
Okay, so
Delaware.
So we got a lot of stuff coming up in the next shows.
We absolutely do. And I believe what they said was that Donald Trump needs anywhere between 53 to 57% of the remaining delegates to actually take it right out.
So I guess we'll find out how he does.
We will.
See you next time.
Have a good one.
Bye.